Hello, this is WFRYE Lisa Fry. You are here because you are wanting to know about driving through chaos, because the only way out is the way through. Today is episode 5. Today I'm going to talk about, give you a little insight on a miracle that happened in my marriage due to willing to suffer. I know that kind of might sound odd. What do you mean I'm willing to suffer? Before I get into this, I'd like to say a prayer. So, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. I always ask Our Lady of Good Counsel, who is the Blessed Mother, to give me guidance and help all the people that are listening in any way that they need. And I ask Saint Therese to take every listener as your child. Amen. So today I would like to share with you this miracle through Saint Therese, what exactly happened. I had known my husband for 10 years. We were dating close to that. Then we were married for 17. We had both been raised Catholic, and we weren't, devout Catholics by all means. And what happened was I left the church for a good 10 years and I became Protestant. And what happened was he and I broke up within when I became a Protestant, I wanted to live a more holy life. So I'm not saying to leave the Catholic Church. I'm just saying what happened in my life. And he and I weren't getting along anymore. So I had to break up with him. And I said, if you want to be with me, you're going to have to love God more than me. So that is a story for another time on what happened with all that. That's another miracle. It's unbelievable, but it's beautiful. And so Saint Therese showed up in my marriage. 7 years into my marriage, we got married outside of the Catholic Church. And I'm not telling anybody, I'm not advising anybody to do that. I'm just letting you know the path that we had taken. And so we had gone into my marriage, raised Catholics, born Catholics, and then we left the church. He followed me out of the Catholic Church to pursue God in that way, and also he did it to pursue me. And when we were married, 7 years into our marriage, I felt that I wanted more normalcy, and I wanted more, because everywhere I went, new churches, they were closing, and I'd go to a new one and try to find, somebody out there in all these churches that all believed the same thing, and I couldn't find it. So I ended up wanting that one place that no matter where you went, they were all going to be on the same page. And so in my marriage, I went back to the Catholic Church, and that caused a lot of strife in my marriage, in my family. And I'm bringing this up to you today because I understand that there are people who don't really know how to endure suffering in a marriage. It is not easy at all. It's a definite sacrifice. So I'm bringing all this up to you because I think that people need to know the secrets. So as I returned to the Catholic Church, so 7 years into my marriage, and before that, it was wonderful. Do we have our problems? Absolutely. Absolutely. There were struggles there. However, we were very close, always very close. And so 7 years into our marriage, I returned to the church. I take I'm pregnant with my third child, and when she was born, I brought everybody to the church and I got them all baptized, and Stephen didn't like that, so he had these resentments against me. He used to always say, you do what you do, but I don't want you taking the kids. And I said, look, they have a God-given right to practice their faith. So with all that said, a good year, as a year is going by, he would sit on the couch as I would go to church on a Sunday. And when I come home, he'd look at me like he was so angry looking. And I didn't know how to help him. I really needed to serve God in the way that I was being called. And yet I wanted to honor my husband. So after a year of him sitting on the couch, he decides to purchase a motorcycle. He was a big, I don't know, they call them the race bikes there. And he was an enthusiast his whole life. He even had pictures of him as a little kid on the motorcycles. And so one day he just shows up with this motorcycle and I'm like, what are you doing? Because to me, that was a very dangerous thing to do. Why would you do that? You have a family. Why would you chance dying on a motorcycle when you have us? So I was so upset. And this lasted so long. I had resentments against him and he had resentments against me. I did not know how, okay? To you, maybe listening to me telling you the story, it might be like, Lisa, get over it. Like, why? Grow up, but the problem wasn't only the motorcycle. It was that he was holding on to these resentments against me and treating me differently than he always was. So maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe it's not the exact same story, but perhaps you are going through something where the person that you love is treating you terribly, or maybe you're the person doing it. So I had resentments against the motorcycle and that he would take off. He would go out on a Sunday, a day that he's supposed to be home with us. And that's all we ever did was, we were a family. Saturday and Sunday come and you don't have to go to work and we can all be together. And now he's ripping us off, so he can go be resentful and go on his motorcycle. With that being said, I had to learn how do I love this man when he's not hearing me. He doesn't care to hear me because he figured, well, you do what you do and I do what I do. You see? So I didn't know how to be married to somebody like this. And so one day I was at his mother's house and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, a thought came to my head. And I'm like, wait a minute. The Catholic Church probably does not even recognize my marriage to Stephen in the Protestant faith. So I'm like, oh my goodness. And then I was like, oh no. Then if that's true, which I have to find out, if that's true, that means that we're free to go. That means that we don't have to stay together. And if that's true, that we don't have a holy matrimony, then I can't be with him intimately because then I'd be committing adultery and fornicating and all of this here. When I say adultery, I mean on God. And you can't be intimate with somebody if you're not married to them. So you might say to yourself, but Lisa, you were married, okay? Yes, I was married, but I didn't have that sacrament. The holy matrimony sacrament. I didn't have it. So I found out I had a contact. I really went all out, okay, to make all of this work which way it was supposed to go. I didn't know. So I contacted the Archdiocese of where I'm from, and I talked to a canon lawyer in the Catholic Church, and I asked them, and it was very true that we were not married. I did not have that sacrament of holy matrimony. So with that said, I had to keep my distance from him, and I'm like, meaning intimately, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he is going to kill me. this is not good, because he's already mad at me that I changed religions. That was a big deal. And I was taking the children with me. So I was just piling up, resentment after resentment, that it was going to come from him. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So with all that said, I had to tell him. And oh my gosh, now he was so cool. And his love for me, even though he was upset for a very long time, this lasted 10 years. And so how do you figure it out? How do you make it work? What do you do? And what happened was he would have that next day. If I said, Stephen, I don't know what to do, we need to get this sacrament, he would have gone with me, no problem. Even though he was being resentful and acting different, he was withholding his daily affection from me. Like I felt uncomfortable just going up to him and just giving him a hug, because I felt like he was going to look at me like, what are you doing? Why are you touching me? You see? So because of his resentment to me. So it was me who was like, wait a minute, I don't know how to marry somebody when they are so resentful to me. So I didn't know what to do. I'm like, right now I'm free to go. How can I marry somebody who I'm going to give my life to them and they're going to treat me like this? Like I physically couldn't do it. And my will was like, wait a minute, I can't allow this. I can't marry somebody who's acting like he hates me. And he always said, Lisa, I don't hate you. I don't despise you. I don't any of that. I just don't like what you're doing. But like I said, he changed, right? So, so it was me that was seeking. I had to seek out like advice. So I would talk to one of my relatives who is a grieving counselor and a social worker, and just had all this great insight. And I would talk for hours and hours and hours, and just, oh my gosh, for so long and over the years. And I just, he said, Stephen has to believe that you love him. And I was like, what? And I didn't know how to do that. I know it sounds crazy, right? Like, of course you love them, but like when you're going through something with anyone in a marriage, you don't know what parts of you are trying to manipulate a situation, what parts of you are trying to be honest, because you're trying to make it work, but you can't really see clearly as you could if you were on the outside. So then I went to a woman at the church. She had 10 children, and I figured she's got to know something. So both her and a very good priest that I trust, he's the one that actually, I'll tell you further, I don't want to give it away yet, but he said, Lisa, the devil would love for your marriage to break up, for your family to break up. You already have, you don't have that sacrament. He said, you already have the institution of family. And I was like, oh, and I thought, right. So my father used to say, Lisa, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it. And I was just like, all of this that was coming towards me, I'm like, all right, this is all true. I have to figure this out. And it took me 10 years. I got it after 3 years. Okay. What I mean by 10 and 3, I'll tell you in a second. After 3 years, I got it enough in my head. I understood that, whether or not this man has resentment against me, no matter how I'm feeling nervous about marrying somebody like that, and why would I do that to myself? I figured I already have a family with this man, so I figured, all right, so we got married, we got the sacrament in the Catholic Church, and the church granted us, retrospective. I know you're like, wait a minute, that has to do with work. What does that have to do with a church and God and grace? That they had honored our way of behaving because we had stayed apart from each other for 3 years while I tried to figure out, should I be with this man? And we we stayed, like, we lived as brother and sister, if you will, meaning we weren't intimate, and we just parented, really, and took care of our own jobs in the family like we normally would do. And he was getting more resentful because I wasn't getting that sacrament with him. So after I made the decision after 3 years, okay, now we have the sacrament. And I will tell you right now, I remember the day I was sitting on the couch and we had some disagreement, and I literally had actual help spiritually that was coming my way. And it was like, okay, here, you could do it this way, or you could do it your way. I remember sitting on the couch and it was given to me from heaven. And I'm like, wow, I actually have help, right? I have help, or I could do it my way and ruin it. And so I remember choosing heaven's advice. And so this resentment against each other did not go away just because we got the sacrament. We had to work this out. So all of a sudden, one day I get this picture in my mind, okay? There was a nun, and she's from France, and her name was Saint Therese, and she became a nun at 15, and she died about 24, I want to say. And I got an image of her in my head, and I saw her carrying a tray, and she had her habit on. That's what the nuns wear, the black and white. Remember those days? And all I seen was her serving. She wasn't smiling. There was nothing that she was saying. She just had a tray in her hand and she was serving someone. And I knew that was meant for me. Okay. I had to learn to do that same thing to Stephen. I had to serve him. I didn't have to smile. So I would go over to him, and I knew this was the direct, because I used to pray the rosary about the situation. And I'd say to Our Lady, what do I do? This is the Mother of God I'm talking to through the rosary, and saying, how do I fix my marriage? And that's when I got this one day, just this thought came into my head that I need to serve Stephen. So I'd go over to him and I'd hand him a plate of food in the living room, and he'd be watching TV, and he'd look at me and he'd be taking the food from me. And I could not smile. I couldn't even talk. I was so disgusted about how he was choosing to be resentful against me. And so he would take the plate of food and he would look at me and he'd say, what are you up to? Just like that. It was really cute the way he did it. So I'm trying to make a long story shorter. And so I just kept doing that. And a lot of times I would fail and I would get resentful again. And then I'd get really, really good at serving him again. And then I'd be resentful. It would go back and forth. But I would say that each time that I would serve him, it got better. It got stronger. I figured it out more and more, like how to actually love, how to be sacrificial. So when you see a young bride and a young groom about to get married, in their outfits, and they're ready to get married, and they're holding hands, and they know love to that level. But when you get married, and in order to have a successful marriage, you have to lay your life down. You might say, yeah, but this and that, eh? Like, obviously, if you're getting hurt physically, you need to leave. It just means that now you have a bad husband and you should separate yourself from him physically so that you don't get hurt or anyone else gets hurt. Remove your children. And this is vice versa too. Maybe the wife is being, abusive to the husband. Let's not forget that is possible. And or the children, or just don't put yourself in harm's way. I had to keep practicing, and it was not easy. I'd be laying in the bed in the morning listening to him take off on his motorcycle, and he'd be gone for like 10 hours. Okay. And I literally was for me to explain this, it doesn't sound like anything horrible, but in the moment it really was. I would put my body, we had a king size bed, I would put my body in the shape of a cross like that of Jesus. And I pictured myself with him, and I had my own cross, and And I felt bad for him. And I'm like, wow, Lord, is this what it's like? Like, I'm nailed to the cross right now. And the people that crucified you, Lord, they just walked away and left you there. And I'm like, that's what Stephen's doing. He's leaving me on the cross. And I felt so abandoned. That was the word. I felt so abandoned. And so over the years, you know, he would call me on the phone because he worked at night. He'd call me on the phone. I would be homeschooling our 3 children. And whenever I picked up the phone and I would say hello, if he did not say to me, Lisa, is it possible that I can talk with you when I get home? If he didn't say that to me, that meant that I had to go a whole other day in trying to get through this because I knew he wasn't going to apologize. You might say, what does he have to apologize for? I wanted him to apologize because that would show me that he understood. He understood like the harm that he personally was causing in the marriage. Okay. I wanted him to not be resentful to me anymore. Like, please, I was open arms with him. Like, come on. But then I would get resentful at the same time because it's like, why aren't you doing that? So anyway, so as the years go by, I'm going into my 10th year now, and all of a sudden one day I remember he came home. He started coming home earlier. Instead of being out all day long, he'd say, so when are you going to be home from church? And he would want to meet up with us. And that was very nice. He was trying to make this work. And so I was still upset, you know, like, you should be with us. You should be going to church. You should be a family day. Let's go, buddy. And so, okay, so one day he came home, and I think that he came home even earlier, and you could tell like he was not happy. He was kind of sad, and he was doing it as a sacrifice to be home. And he just went upstairs and he went into his room and into our room, and I felt really super bad. I'm like, what am I doing? Because of his sacrifice, I started to see that I needed to be even more sacrificial. So I went upstairs and I said, look, I can see that you're not happy. You know, all these years I was fighting for my rights, and now all of a sudden he's helping me, but he's not happy about it, you know? So I was like, just go, just why don't you go out, please? And I'm not sure if he did or not. I can't really remember. It was so long ago. But the thing is, I will tell you this, and this was the beautiful part. And let me tell you, it was not easy. This was such a burden in my family life. It really was. It was so, and it was all just about resentment and just, I had switched religions. I went back to my original faith. I went home to the Catholic Church. That's what this was all about. And I want to tell you that Saint Therese, okay, when she was on the earth, she said that she was going to do all her good in heaven upon the earth, and she was going to rain down roses. She was going to shower roses down on the earth. And so, okay, with that said, one day I am sitting at the kitchen table, and all of a sudden Stephen comes home from work in the morning and he hands me a dozen roses. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Valentine's Day, right? Like, if he were going to give me flowers at any time besides Valentine's Day, it would be daisies, one of my favorite flowers. So he said, oh, just because. And I thought, okay. So didn't understand that. And then I think it was either the next day or 2 days later. Oh, you know what? Let me back up. Before the flowers, one day I call my girlfriend, and I just felt so trained that I had trained myself through the grace of God how to be sacrificial to Stephen on my side. He was doing his parts and I was doing mine. And I called up my girlfriend and I said, oh my gosh, I said, I feel like Saint Therese just opened the door. And like, I used to see her, this image that I told you about, but down this long, like if you were to look through the toilet paper roll, you know, a long one, and I could see her over there at the end. It was never close to me because I knew I had a long way to go. Well, one day I felt like she just opened up the door and inviting me in. Like literally that's what it felt like. That's what I sensed. And so I called my girlfriend. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like St. Therese just opened the door for me and said, you did it, even though I still had some resentments, don't get me wrong. But I had conquered so much. So now he brings me home flowers. And then again, he brings me home flowers. Roses, mind you, and it's not even a holiday. So again, I said, what's this for? He says, just because. Okay. So one night, soon after that, I'm upstairs. He's going to work at 1 a.m. I'm alone. I'm reading about something about the Pope. And he said, oh, I always receive white roses. Mine were not white. White roses from St. Therese from heaven. Well, all of a sudden, these thoughts about Stephen bringing me home flowers, me listening to St. Therese and trying to serve Stephen all of these years. And all of a sudden he brings me 24 roses and it's not even St. Valentine's Day. So all of a sudden I get up and I have to try to be quiet because my kids are sleeping and I am wailing and I'm crying. I'm now on the floor. I get out of my bed and I'm like, oh my gosh, these weren't from Stephen. They were from you. She was rewarding me. Okay. Oh my goodness. It was beautiful. I still have the roses. I don't even think I shared any of this with him. I don't even think he knows. I mean, now he knows in heaven, but oh my goodness, it was so wonderful. Now, mind you, with that being said, how beautiful is this, what I'm about to share with you? About a month and a half, maybe a month before Mr. Fry, my beloved, goes with the Lord, none of us know what's going to happen. We have no idea. We think we're going to grow old together. He walks into the living room. He doesn't say a word, and he motions his head into the other room, and he wants me to follow him. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to tell me. He looks really angry. He's going to tell me he wants a divorce or something, I bet. So I come into the room. He shuts the door. He turns around, and he starts to cry so hard that I have no idea what he's saying. He's talking while he's crying, but he's doing it hard. And he's like, I'm sorry. And I hear I'm sorry in there. And I don't even know what he's saying. And I'm just reaching out my arms and I just felt so bad. I was like, I said, it's okay. I said, I love you. It's okay. And he's just trying to tell me something. And he was telling me that he was sorry for all that he had done and how he was treating me all of these years. So I understood that he got it. He understood. He understood. And God was stirring his heart. God was stirring his heart because God knew that he was going to take him. And he needed to reward me and to get his heart situated. And right before that night, I remember being in bed and in the morning twice, 2 different occasions. Stephen had these huge hands. Somebody called them paws once when we were getting our rings for our wedding. And he was petting my head and he said, we don't treat you right in this house. And I said, it's okay. He goes, no, it's not. He did that twice. And then the other time when he told me to come in the room and he apologized, this was all because I had been obedient or tried really, really hard to obey the image that God had given to me about how to get through this, right? How to get through this situation with my spouse. So I had to be sacrificial. I had to know what that looked like without manipulating. I had to truly love. I had to come from a place that even though it was really super ugly in my heart and in his heart, and it was just ugly and all that wasted time, that when you truly love, right? The way God wants you to love, and you are obedient to Him the best that you can. If you fail, you get back up and you do it again. And if you fail, you get up and you do it again. And if you don't keep trying, you're not going to get your reward. And Stephen Fry, he apologized. He got it. And so the night that he had come to church with us, the night that he died, the weekend that he died, I'm not going to share that now about all that, but I will let you know that God later on showed me like what a blessing that even though God ended up taking him away from us and bringing him to himself, that the very last moment that I ever touched my husband, I said to him, okay, because they were going on vacation, I said, would you like me to put some holy water on you? He came to church with us that night, and then I blessed his forehead with holy water in the shape of a cross, and I said, may Jesus, Mary, and Joseph protect you and return you to me safely. And that I had sent him into all eternity. The last time I ever touched him was with the sign of the cross with holy water, and I had sent him with a wifely blessing. So it all... do I miss him? Oh, I miss him more than I can't even tell. I can't even explain it. But God was so faithful through it all. It was beautiful. So I just wanted to share that with you, that, whatever you're going through, I don't know what you're going through. Don't put yourself in harm's way for sure. And that you can get through hard times. We are capable of doing hard things, especially when we rely on God, when you seek Him out, when you don't give up, when you know when you know what He wants you to do, and you just and you just have to fulfill it. There were times that I had to be quiet, and I remember hearing God tell me, Lisa, don't argue. He'll see His ways if you're quiet, right? Be blameless. So that if you're arguing, then I'm right, you're right, I'm right, you go back and forth this way, just be quiet a lot of the time, and it's you have to keep seeking righteousness. What is the right thing to do in this moment instead of running? I mean, I was at the phone book waiting to go and look for a lawyer to get divorced, many things. I was not an angel. So just to let you know, you just got to keep trying. Go through, right? So the name of this podcast is Thriving Through Chaos. The only way out is the way through. So with all of that said, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. I ask Our Lady of Good Counsel to be with all of you listeners in your marriages, in your situations, whatever it is you're struggling with, and with who you're struggling with. And I ask Saint Therese to continue to grow and show all these beautiful people the way through. And thank you so much for joining me today and listening to my story that I hope will bless you. It's awesome. And thank you for joining me today at WFRYE. Thriving Through Chaos. The only way out is the way through. God bless you. Bye-bye.